Hello everyone. I would like to present our publication, an application of Ant algorithm for routing optimization problem. Nature-inspired algorithms are computational methods of data processing in which there is causality observed in natural phenomena. The methods can be divided into categories of genetic algorithm, evolutionary algorithm, neural networks, or swarm intelligence. Swarm intelligence is an emerging area in the field of optimization. Researcher has developed various algorithms by modeling the behavior of different swarms of animals and insects such as ants, bees, termites, birds, fish. Ant colony optimization, ACO, is a robust and very effective optimization technique, proposed initially by Marco Dorigo in the 1992. And then successfully used to solve the traveling salesman problem. Observations of the behavior of ants seeking resources in the natural environment have led to interesting methods of solving difficult optimization problems. Ants, as single insect, have relatively limited possibilities. However, as a colony, thanks to efficient cooperation between all units belonging to it, they are able to function very well in the complex conditions of their environment. Observation of the ant and termite colonies gave rise to the idea to apply the mechanism developed by these insects in computer simulations. Ant colony optimization is a population-based meta-heuristic technique inspired by biological characteristics of ants. Thanks to the use of many primitive agents that can properly communicate central information to each other, ant algorithms are an interesting method of solving many optimization problems. There are several ant systems that describe solutions based on ant behavior. These are ant system, ant colony system, ant colony optimization, ant algorithms, and many others. This slide depicts the principle of operation of the ant algorithm. The ants try to get to their food by the shortest route, and then return to the nest as quickly as possible. They leave a pheromone trail along the route of the journey. The pheromone trail left behind is the strongest of the most traveled road, and the most traveled road is usually the shortest route. The traveling salesman problem is a very important issue in the context of ant colony optimization, as this is the problem that ant system was originally applied to and was later often used as a benchmark to test new ideas and algorithm variants. Let us consider ant colony optimization for the traveling salesman problem. We have here n cities or nodes and e edges. For this picture here, there are 4 cities, A, B, C, and D, and 6 edges between those cities or those nodes. D is the cost, way, or distance of the trip from city I to city J. The ant moves from one city to the next with some probability. The ant will move from node I to node J with the probability given by the following formula, where capital T is the number of pheromones at the edge ij, alpha is the parameter controlling the influence of a T, n of the edge ij is the attractiveness, it's equal to 1 divided by the distance, and beta is the parameter controlling the influence of n. So basically, if the next city is close to our city, or if there is a lot of pheromone on the trail, on the edge that leads to that city, the probability that we'll move with this edge is higher. Also, the alpha and beta parameters give us the possibility to fine-tune our algorithms. After successfully completing the route, the ant leaves a mark on all edges it has traveled. This footprint is inversely proportional to the distance traveled. Capital T is the number of pheromones on the edge ij, and delta Tij is the pheromone evaporation rate. It is worth emphasizing that pheromone evaporate. This means that the intensity of pheromone at all edges decreases with each iteration of the algorithm. Finally, each iteration must update the pheromone intensity values. This picture illustrates the simplified ACO algorithm for the traveling salesman problem. First, we need to initialize data. So set the number of ants, number of cities, number of iterations, and so on, all the necessary parameters. Then we place the ant at our initial city, or we can actually randomly select the city if necessary. For each ant, then we select next city. We know the function of probability, so we'll move with this probability to the next city. If there are still cities, more cities to visit, then we'll select the next city and so on until there are no more cities to visit. Then we will return to our starting, our initial city. So after each ant will complete the route, it will then update the route tracking data using the toll cost, so the pheromone will be updated. If the termination criteria are met, such as the number of iteration, number of ants, and so on, then we will finish the algorithm and show the best result, the best route found by the ants. One of the aims of the paper was to better understand the influence of selected parameters and algorithm configurations on the time quality and accuracy of the obtained solution. The result of research carried out were obtained by using the ANT algorithm with the help of program especially developed for this purpose by authors in order to develop the research tool MATLAB 2020B was used. The program structure was adopted based on standard ACO algorithm and functionalities. The main functions were create graph, graph, thickness function, update pheromone, draw pheromone, create colony, and so on. Each functions performed the assigned task and provided the result solutions in the form of the optimal path. The design experiment assumes that the objects, in this case the artificial ants, will move along a qualitative simulated route thanks to the value specified by the name tau, so thanks to the pheromone concentration. The journey takes place along a simulated path with a graph structure. The main task of artificial ants is to mark the path qualitatively, simulating a pheromone which is a chemical trace left by the real ants. Virtual agents, the ants, have the ability to leave a chemical trace multiple times along the road, and the optimal route is determined by the ants by repeatedly depositing a virtual chemical trace on a given edge. Some of the important parameters are distance between vertices, necessary to adopt an appropriate number of ants and cities. And this is the regular formula for distance between two points. Concentration of pheromone is another parameter, and we can calculate it with the following formula, where the value of the concentration of pheromone tau ij at the time t plus 1 is equal to the pheromone concentration tau ij at the time t with the influence of the delta tau, which is the pheromone evaporation. And the pheromone evaporation itself, it's calculated also with the following formula. Choosing the city, the probability of choosing a city is given by the formula which we discussed before. The data to be tested are first of all the number of points or cities represented by the vertices of the graph and the number of ants that will test the connections between the cities. The obtained results indicate the qualitative value of the path, which is the sum of the distances between the points. Based on the result, it is possible to analyze the results of the algorithm. The charts here show the distribution of cities and connections between 14 cities. If we increase the number of cities, the percentage of possible connection of possible paths found in a single iteration is lower. It's decreased relatively. The observation shows that the optimal selections of the number of iteration and ants to the number of cities significantly affect the time and quality of the solution found. The number of connections checked in one iterations largely depends on the number of ants and the number of cities. The greater the number of cities, the greater the number of connection edges between them. Then, of course, more ants are needed to explore different potential pathways. The chart below is used to visualize the best path found in a single iterations. The best path for each iteration may be different. So it is not the optimal path, but it is the best path for a single iterations. On subsequent iterations of the program, ants usually choose alternate paths. Each time they leave the pheromone on the best found path. The amount of pheromone left on each edge is inversely proportional to the length of the edge. This means that if the edge is shorter, the more pheromone is left on it, and therefore the edge is more attractive to the ants. Such connection has a more favorable fitness function value. In this illustration, the shortest road found in a single iterations for a number of cities equal to 50, and we have also best found way in iterations for the 14 cities. More randomly scattered cities means that the shortest edge can be chosen. The selected smaller distances made the amount of pheromone left on the edge comparable for many different paths. And this means that if we have many short distances, path selection is less determined by the pheromone and the fitness function. The graph below illustrates the distribution of the amount of pheromone along the path. The concentrations of the accumulated pheromone depends on the number of the best tracks used on a given road and on the length of the edge under considerations. These parameters are related to each other in mutual correlations. We can see on the picture that the longest path for the 14 cities pictures are in a brighter color than the short path because there is less pheromone on the longer connections than it is on the shorter ones. The obtained results show that depending on the number of iterations and the number of ants, a more optimal distribution of the pheromone can be obtained. So with optimal parameters, it is possible to find the optimal path with lower computational requirements and in a shorter time. The amount of pheromone accumulated at the edges is also subject to reduction. After each iteration, a certain amount of pheromone is evaporated, is reduced. The greater the number of cities and the smaller the number of ants, the less chance that the best route will follow the same route in the next iteration. Then pheromone evaporation is more important in the process of finding the optimal path. The evaporation parameter setting can be treated as another important factor in fine-tuning the proper configuration of searching for the optimal time and for the quality solutions. If search for a solution is not limited by time or resources, then there is a good chance of finding the optimal path. But in practice, we will limit the ant algorithm in terms of the number of iterations, ants, evaporation rate, or execution time. Then the found solutions may be the best, but only close, may not be the best, but only close to the optimal path. This slide depicts some of the many results obtained during the research. Time presented is in milliseconds. The relationship between the number of ants, the number of iterations, evaporation rate, and the total distance are quite interesting. The conducted research showed that the appropriate proportions of ants to the number of iterations give quite good results in a shorter calculation time. And changing the ant count, iteration, or evaporation parameter does not always lead to better result and better calculation time. The conclusions are that the obtained results clearly show that not always increasing computer resources leads to faster finding of optimal results. The ANT algorithm with a sufficiently long runtime leads to optimal results. The execution time of algorithm change almost in proportion to the number of iterations and the ants used. On the basis of the obtained results, it can be concluded that depending on the number of iterations and the number of ants and the degree of pheromone evaporation, a more optimal pheromone distribution can be obtained. This means that with the appropriately selected parameters, it is possible to find the optimal path with the use of less resources and in a shorter time. It should also be noted that the calculation depends on the number of cities and the location. If the cities are grouped together, finding the correct solutions is more problematic and requires more calculations than it is when they are distributed evenly. In most cases, the optimal paths run through the connections of the points with the highest amount of pheromone. After the pathways are saturated with pheromone, similar good solutions are found regardless of increasing the number of iterations of the number of ants. So the increasing the resources doesn't matter in this case. Changes in the value of pheromone evaporation coefficients are able to change also these conditions. Thank you for your time and attention.